Hello guys, news today here. I bet you didn't know how World War II and the Cold War are deeply connected. These events changed everything for many people. The first event was World War II. It was a huge war. Many countries fought each other. Millions of people died in this terrible war. Cities were destroyed by bombs. Families were torn apart by the fighting. This war showed how destructive humans could be. It lasted for 6 long years, from 1939 to 1945. Everyone hoped for peace after it ended. After World War II finished, a new problem started. This problem was called the Cold War. It was not a hot war with big battles like World War II. Instead, it was a war of ideas and fear. Two very strong countries were the main players. These were the United States and the Soviet Union. They had different ways of thinking about government. They had different ideas about how people should live. This created a lot of mistrust between them and their friends. These two periods, World War II and the Cold War, are linked. The end of World War II helped to start the Cold War. The world was very different after the big war. Old powerful countries were weaker, new powerful countries rose up. The way countries talked to each other changed. Understanding this connection is very important. It helps us understand the world we live in today. Many things in our world now are because of these past events. This essay will talk about these important times. We will look at World War II first. We will see its big battles and important moments, then we will explore how it led to the Cold War. We will learn about the Cold War's key events. We will also see how these events shaped history. It is a story of great struggle. It is also a story of how the world changed in big ways for everyone. World War II did not start suddenly. There were many reasons it began. One big reason was World War I. The First War ended in 1918. It left many countries upset and poor. Germany was blamed for World War I. Germany had to pay a lot of money. This made life hard for German people. Some leaders used this anger to gain power. They promised to make their countries strong again. This created a dangerous situation in Europe. Adolf Hitler became the leader of Germany. He was the head of the Nazi Party. Hitler had big plans. He wanted Germany to be very powerful. He started to build a big army. This was against the rules made after World War I. Other countries watched Germany. Some were worried by Hitler's actions, but they hoped to avoid another big war. They tried to talk with Hitler. They hoped he would stop. Other countries also had strong leaders with big plans. Italy was led by Benito Mussolini. He also wanted to expand his country's power. Japan in Asia also wanted more land and resources. Japan invaded China in the 1930s. These countries started to work together. They were known as the Axis powers. They were aggressive. They began to take over smaller, weaker countries nearby. This made the world very unstable. The war officially started in 1939. Germany invaded Poland on September 1st. This was the final straw for other big countries. Britain and France declared war on Germany. They were called the Allies. They wanted to stop Hitler's plans. They wanted to protect Poland, but Germany's army was strong and fast. The fighting spread quickly across Europe. The world was once again in a major global conflict. World War II was fought in many places. It was fought in Europe, it was fought in Africa, it was fought in Asia. It was also fought on the oceans. Millions of soldiers moved across the world. Germany used a new way to fight. It was called Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. This meant very fast attacks. They used tanks and airplanes together. This helped Germany win many early battles very quickly. They took over countries like France, Norway and Denmark. In Asia, Japan was also winning. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in the United States in 1941. This was a surprise attack on a US naval base. This event brought the United States into the war. The USA joined the Allies. Now the war was even bigger. Japan continued to take over islands in the Pacific Ocean. They fought against American, British and other Allied soldiers. The fighting in the jungles and on islands was very hard. Soldiers faced tough conditions and fierce enemies. In North Africa, British forces fought against German and Italian armies. The desert was a difficult place to fight. There was little water and extreme heat. Control of North Africa was important. It was important for oil supplies. It was also important for controlling the Mediterranean Sea. Famous battles like El Alamein took place there. These battles helped to change who was winning in that part of the world. General Rommel, known as the Desert Fox, led German forces there. The Soviet Union also joined the Allies. Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941. This was a very big mistake for Hitler. The Soviet Union was a huge country. It had a very large army. The fighting on the Eastern Front was brutal. Millions of soldiers and civilians died. Winters in Russia were very cold. German soldiers were not prepared for the harsh weather. This front became one of the deadliest in the entire war. There were several very important moments in World War II. These moments helped to change who was winning the war. One of these was the Battle of Stalingrad. This battle was fought in the Soviet Union. It lasted from 1942 to 1943. German forces tried to capture the city of Stalingrad. Soviet soldiers defended it fiercely. The fighting was street by street, house by house. It was incredibly brutal and cost many lives on both sides. The Soviet victory at Stalingrad was a huge turning point. It was a major defeat for Germany on the Eastern Front. Germany lost many soldiers and much equipment. After Stalingrad, the Soviet army began to push the Germans back. They started moving west towards Germany. This showed that Germany was not unbeatable. It gave hope to the Allies. The German army would now be fighting a defensive war in the east. This put great pressure on their resources. Another very important event was D-Day. This happened on June 6, 1944. Allied soldiers from America, Britain, Canada and other countries landed on the beaches of Normandy in France. France was occupied by Germany at the time. This was a huge operation. Thousands of ships and airplanes were used. The soldiers faced strong German defenses. Many were killed or wounded. But the Allies managed to get a foothold in France. This opened up a new front in Western Europe. From Normandy, the Allied armies began to push east. They fought many hard battles to free France. Then they moved towards Germany itself. At the same time, Soviet armies were pushing from the east. Germany was now being squeezed from two sides. The leaders of Germany knew they were in a very bad situation. These turning points showed that the Axis powers were losing the war. The end of the war was getting closer, but much fighting still remained. Section 5. Victory and a New World, the end of World War II. The war in Europe came to an end in May 1945. Allied armies from the west met Soviet armies from the east in Germany. They surrounded the German capital, Berlin. Adolf Hitler died in Berlin as the city fell. Germany surrendered to the Allies. This was called VE Day, or Victory in Europe Day. People in Allied countries celebrated the end of the long and terrible war in Europe. But the war was not over everywhere yet. The fighting continued in Asia. Japan was still fighting hard in the Pacific. The United States and its allies were moving closer to Japan. They captured many islands. The fighting was very fierce. Japanese soldiers often fought to the death. American leaders worried that invading Japan would cost many lives. They had a new, very powerful weapon. This weapon was the atomic bomb. It was a secret project. They decided to use it to try and end the war quickly. This decision was very controversial. In August 1945, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs. One was dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. A few days later, another was dropped on the city of Nagasaki. These bombs caused terrible destruction. Many thousands of people died instantly. Many more died later from injuries and radiation. After these bombings, Japan surrendered. This was VJ Day, or Victory over Japan Day. World War II was finally over everywhere in the world. The world breathed a sigh of relief. The end of World War II left the world greatly changed. Millions of people were dead, cities were in ruins, countries were poor, Europe was especially damaged. The old powers of Britain and France were weaker. 2 countries became very strong. These were the United States and the Soviet Union. They had helped win the war, but they had very different ideas about the future. This difference would soon lead to new problems for the world. Section 6. From Allies to Rivals, the Cold War slowly begins. During World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union were allies. They fought together against Germany and Japan, but they were very different countries. The United States believed in democracy and capitalism. This means people can choose their leaders. People can own businesses. The Soviet Union believed in communism. This means the government controls most things. There was only one political party. These differences were hidden during the war because they had a common enemy. After the war ended, these differences became very important. There was no common enemy anymore. The USA and the USSR started to distrust each other. They worried about each other's power. Both countries wanted to spread their own ideas to other parts of the world. Leaders from both sides met at conferences like Yalta and Potsdam. They tried to decide what to do with Europe after the war, but they disagreed on many key issues, especially about Eastern Europe. The Soviet Union wanted to have friendly countries on its western border. They had been invaded by Germany twice. They wanted a buffer zone to protect themselves. So they helped communist governments come to power in countries like Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia. The United States and Britain were worried by this. They saw it as the Soviet Union trying to control Eastern Europe. They wanted these countries to be free to choose their own governments. This disagreement was a major source of tension. A power vacuum also existed after the war. Germany and Japan were defeated and weak. Britain and France were also much weaker than before. This left the United States and the Soviet Union as the two most powerful nations in the world. They became known as superpowers. Each superpower wanted to have more influence than the other. This competition for power and influence was a key part of the Cold War. The old alliance was breaking apart very quickly. Section 7, An Iron Curtain Falls, Division and Great Tension. Winston Churchill was the leader of Britain during much of World War II. In 1946 he gave a famous speech. He said that an iron curtain had fallen across Europe. This iron curtain divided the continent. On one side were the countries of Western Europe. They were mostly democratic and allied with the United States. On the other side were the countries of Eastern Europe. They were communist and allied with the Soviet Union. This phrase, Iron Curtain, became a symbol of the Cold War division. Germany itself was divided. After the war, Germany was split into 4 zones. The USA, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union each controlled a zone. The capital city, Berlin, was also divided. Berlin was deep inside the Soviet zone. In 1948, the Soviet Union tried to force the Western Allies out of Berlin. They blocked all roads and railways into West Berlin. This was called the Berlin Blockade. The people in West Berlin had no food or supplies. The Western Allies responded with the Berlin Airlift. For almost a year, American and British planes flew supplies into West Berlin. They brought food, fuel, and medicine. It was a huge effort. It showed that the West would not give up West Berlin. The Soviet Union eventually lifted the blockade in 1949. The division of Germany became permanent. West Germany became a democratic country. East Germany became a communist country. This division was a clear sign of the Cold War. To protect themselves, countries formed military alliances. In 1949, the United States, Canada, and Western European countries formed NATO. NATO stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization. They promised to help each other if one of them was attacked. The Soviet Union and its allies in Eastern Europe formed their own alliance. This was called the Warsaw Pact. It was formed in 1955. These two powerful military blocs faced each other across the Iron Curtain. The world was now clearly split into 2 opposing camps. Section 8, Living on the Brink, Major Cold War Crises. The Cold War had many dangerous moments. These moments could have led to a new world war. This time, it could have been a nuclear war. Both the USA and the USSR developed atomic bombs. Then they developed even more powerful hydrogen bombs. This was called the arms race. Each side tried to build more and better weapons than the other. This made the world a very scary place. People lived with the fear of nuclear destruction. This fear was constant for many decades. One big crisis was the Korean War. It lasted from 1950 to 1953. Korea was divided after World War II. North Korea was communist, South Korea was not. In 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea. The United States and other United Nations countries helped South Korea. China, a communist country, helped North Korea. Millions of people died in this war. The war ended with Korea still divided. It showed that the Cold War could turn into a hot war in some places. Perhaps the most dangerous moment was the Cuban Missile Crisis. This happened in 1962. The Soviet Union put nuclear missiles in Cuba. Cuba is an island very close to the United States. American leaders saw these missiles as a direct threat. President John F. Kennedy demanded that the missiles be removed. For 13 days, the world watched anxiously. The USA and USSR were very close to nuclear war. Luckily, they found a peaceful solution. The Soviets removed the missiles. The USA promised not to invade Cuba. Another long and difficult conflict was the Vietnam War. Vietnam was also divided into a communist north and a non-communist south. The United States helped South Vietnam fight against North Vietnam and communist rebels. The war lasted for many years, from the 1950s to 1975. It was very costly in lives and money. Many people in America protested against the war. Eventually, the United States pulled out its troops. Vietnam became a united communist country. These crises showed how the Cold War affected regions all over the globe. Section 9, the wall comes down, end of an era and lasting echoes. In the 1980s, things began to change in the Soviet Union. A new leader named Mikhail Gorbachev came to power. He introduced new policies. These were called glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring. He wanted to make the Soviet system more open. He wanted to improve the economy. These changes had big effects. People in Eastern Europe started to demand more freedom. They were tired of communist rule and Soviet control. They saw a chance for change. A very important event happened in 1989. The Berlin Wall came down. The Berlin Wall had divided East and West Berlin since 1961. It was a strong symbol of the Cold War. People from East Berlin were not allowed to cross to West Berlin. On November 9, 1989, the East German government announced that people could cross. Thousands of people went to the wall. They climbed on it. They started to tear it down. It was a joyful moment. It showed that the Cold War was ending. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, other communist governments in Eastern Europe also fell. Countries like Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia became democratic. Germany was reunited into one country in 1990. The Soviet Union itself began to break apart. Many of its republics declared independence. In 1991, the Soviet Union officially ended. The Cold War was over. The United States remained the world's main superpower. This was a huge shift in global power. The end of World War II and the Cold War has lasting impacts. Many new countries were formed. The map of Europe changed a lot. International groups like the United Nations became more important. The world still faces challenges like terrorism and regional conflicts, but the threat of a global nuclear war between superpowers has greatly reduced. Understanding this history helps us understand today's world. It shows how events from the past continue to shape our lives and our future in many ways.